إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ.
طيب, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has allowed us to come together once again to learn from the greatest of languages, Lughat al-Quran, the language of the Quran. إِنَّا جَعَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. Verily, we have made the Quran in the Arabic language, so you perhaps may attain understanding. So the greatest way to understand the Quran and the Sunnah, it is through understanding the Arabic language and learning it. It has its excellence. We know that, as our scholars have said, from amongst them Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, in his renowned work Iqtida Sirat al-Mustaqim, that al-Lisan al-Arabi is shi'ar al-Islam wa ahli. The Arabic language, it is the symbol of Islam and its people. And also he says, it is min a'zam al-sha'air, it is from the greatest of symbols that the nations stand out with. And we know that there has come narrations and statements from scholars regarding the virtues of Lughat al-Arabiya. But what is sufficient as a virtue, that some have mentioned, that it is the language of the Quran and also the language of the people of Jannah, and it is Lughat Adam ala Zahir al-Quran, and it's the language of others from the prophets. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ended the prophecy of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam with this language. So they said, ابتدأ بلغة العربية, started with the first revelation being onto Prophet Adam in the Arabic language, and ended with the last of revelation being onto the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And even Orientalists, mustashriqun, have attested of the virtue and the merits of the Arabic language. Some Orientalists who studied the Arabic language in order to attack Islam, that was the cause of them embracing Islam. And there's books have been written on that. This is a language that is full of richness. And we know that us speaking with this language and learning it, it is something that we should increase in. As those words also, those profound statements of Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah that is commonly shared and passed on, is his words, اعلم أن اعتياد اللغة يؤثر في العقل والخلق. اعلم أن اعتياد اللغة يؤثر في العقل والخلق والدين تأثيرا قويا بينا. He says, have knowledge of certainty that making it habitual that you constantly speak of the Arabic language, it has an impact on the intellect and the character and also on the deen of the person in a huge manner that it's noticeable. And we see this. When we speak Arabic, we act differently. And it has an impact on our manners, it has an impact on how we think, and it also has an impact on our religion. And he goes on to say, وَيُؤثِّرْ أَيْضًا فِي مُشَابَهَةِ صَدْرِ هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ مِنَ الصَّحَابَةِ وَالتَّابِعِينَ. It also has an impact by resembling the early part of this ummah, from the Sahabas and the Tabi'een. And he says, resembling them, تَزِيدُ الْعَقْلِ وَالدِّينِ وَالْخُلُقِ. Resembling such people increases the intellect, it strengthens the mind, and also strengthens the religion and the character of the person. And he says, فَإِنَّ نَفْسَ اللُّغَةِ الْعَرَبِيَّةِ مِنَ الدِّينِ وَمَعْرِفَتُهَا فَرْضٌ وَاجِبٌ. He says, the Arabic language in itself, it is from the deen, and knowing it, it is incumbent and compulsory. And some have said, meaning fardul kifayi, generally a collective obligation that if some do it, is no longer required from the others, except from a recommended perspective. And as Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, he has mentioned, إنما يعرف فضل القرآن من عرف كلام العرب. And the one who knows, they say you wouldn't really know the real virtues and the value of the Quran except the one who knows the Arabic language. Even they said no matter how much translations, tarjuma that you have, it will still not have the true impact as hearing it in the Arabic language and understanding it. And in the preface of the translation of the Noble Quran, Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh, he mentioned no matter how good the translator is in both languages, he will still not be able to deliver the exact meaning that the Arabic language conveys. Because there's no language equivalent to what they say. La tusawi. There's no language that is equivalent to the Arabic language. So to say that this is an exact translation, there's no such thing. There's only taqreeb al-ma'na. It approximates or makes it easier to somewhat have an overview of the meaning, not the exact meaning, brothers. And there's also has come a number of narrations from the Salaf or Salih, in particular in the book Musannaf Abdul with number of statements from the scholars showing how important it is that we remind each other to learn the Arabic language. Some of them will say it's been attributed to Ubay ibn Ka'b, learn Arabic just as you learn to memorize the Quran. And some, we know that as-Salaf كانوا يؤدبون أطفالهم على اللحن. They used to discipline their children for grammatical errors, let alone not knowing Arabic language. Just if they make a grammatical error, they would discipline them upon. And they say the Arabic language, it is known بالحس والمعنى from life experiences and also what has been relayed and conveyed, that it increases the intelligence of the person. Wallahi, we find those who give importance to the Arabic literature and understanding it and studying it, they increase in intelligence. They increase in intelligence. And also it's a beauty. They say men have never worn a garment more beautiful than Arabic. اللغة العربية يا أخوة زينة. It's بلاغة. فصاحتها زين. Its eloquence is an adornment. Its art of conveyance, it is an enjoyment. And else in particular, nahu, Arabic grammar. They say nahu zaynun yukrimu nahu zaynun lil-fata yukrimuhu haythu ata. Man lam yakun ya'rifuhu yanbaghi lahu an yaskut. They say Arabic grammar, it is an adornment. The one for a young man, meaning that the man who wants to be beautified in his speech, then let him learn Arabic grammar. And whoever doesn't know it, then let him remain silent, meaning it is repugnant of speech to speak without such manner of eloquence. And also it comes in a narration attributed to Abu Musa al-Ash'ari that he was once performing tawaf and he heard two men speaking in a language other than the Arabic language behind him. So he turned to them and he said, find some way to learn Arabic. Find some way to learn Arabic. Also, there's a story of some of the mashayikh. They found someone going around the Kaaba doing tawaf, and he just had a little booklet. He was going around reading from it, like du'as, and he stopped him. He said, "Do you know any of the meanings of these du'as that you're reading?" He said, "I encourage you to start learning Arabic language." So it is very important that the people strive to learn Arabic language. At times, a person may even fall into saying something about Allah and His Messenger, that which is incorrect because of how he speaks. And some people speak and they don't learn the Arabic language correctly. And some of the scholars have said, I fear that if I do not know Arabic grammar, that I lie upon the Prophet ﷺ. And sometimes people memorize hadith and they're not fluent in the Arabic grammar, and as a result they say something that about what the Prophet ﷺ have said of hadith incorrectly, and it distorts the meaning. So this is as a slight reminder of the importance of being patient and persevering and learning this language. And in particular, we are resuming our Monday sessions, choosing books that are encouraged that we read from. There are various of books that are out there prescribed for لغير الناطقين باللغة العربية, for those who are foreigners, those who do not speak the Arabic language and want to learn it. There is a specific curriculum. At times some of the brothers, they join the curriculum of كتب للناطقين بالعربية, those who speak Arabic, and as a result they encounter a number of challenges, which is incorrect. So you should strive to learn some of the booklets that have been written in simplifying the tariqah and the approach of learning Arabic language from a foreigner, from a perspective of someone who is not from the natiqeen who speaks Arabic language. So there's even books been written by people of our like who learned Arabic, and they weren't people who had this as a mother tongue. So their approach was something we can relate to, they say. We can relate to the books of people who wrote Arabic, books of grammar in particular, that we could relate to. In specific, the best of those works that are written for لغير الناطقين بها is the series of كتب المدينة. كتب المدينة, these series, they say, I believe it started from 1969 approximately. From that time, written by his author, who is a man that is an expert in this field, they say. He said he has over 50 years in experience teaching Arabic to people that are non-Arabs. And he first introduced these series of these works, and he wrote them when he became a teacher in Jamia Islamiyah, in the Islamic University of Medina. And up until now, I believe, the Arabic faculty teaches those series and those works that he has introduced. And he was someone that went through various of struggles in his path of learning. So he wanted to make what he went through somewhat easier for those who come after him, because later on he excelled in the Arabic language by going to the Azhar University, and when he went through various challenges in learning, he wanted to author in a way where people that are non-Arabs, they can learn these books in an easy way. So these three books, Kitab al-Awwal, Kitab al-Thani, and Kitab al-Thalith, the first part of his book, we want to know like the differences of these books, inshallah, so we can understand. Also, we're going to mention other books that have been written in that field. For لِغَيْرِ النَّاطِقِينَ بِهَا. So the first book, book Medina 1, book 1, it's more so for you to have a basic understanding of Arabic. It's more as an introduction of Arabic vocabulary, and as a madkhal, they say, as an entry point to the study of Arabic grammar. And it's what a lot of those who start from a background of not knowing Arabic, they need as a motivation to not jump in directly into the science of nahu, but somewhat be introduced gradually to its work. And the second book, book 2, deals with many important concepts of nahu, but it does so in a manner where it's not overwhelming. It's not overwhelming like Kutub Nahu. So book 2 has a lot of important affairs. Like, for example, it learns about dual and plural forms of verbs. Book 2 also speaks about the verb in command form, fil amr. Also, book 3 touches on the tanween when there's no tanween in the words. Also touches on some of the rules of numbers. Also, it speaks about verbs that contain weak letters. I will speak about what weak letters, inshallah. Book 3, this is the main sum of his work. This is the main project. If you achieve understanding this book, book 3, you can dive into the ocean without a life jacket, they say. You can go and study Arabic nahu as Arabs study Arabic nahu. And it's a book that has so much benefits. So much benefits. Like book 3, it deals with the topic of i'rab, and it deals with the discussion of marfu' and mansub. Also speaks about the topic of majzoom. It introduces you to very other new subjects of nahu. Also, it introduces you to علامات الإعراب الأصلية وعلامات الإعراب الفرعية, the primary case endings of words in their vowels, and the secondary case endings. Are there other works that are similar to the series of Kutub Medina? Yes, from them is Al-Arabiyya Bayna Yadayk. Al-Arabiyya Bayna Yadayk, of 3 parts, written by, I believe, 3 individuals, 3 professors. And some have given even preference of Al-Arabiyya Bayna Yadayk over the Medina books. So it's a book that you would want to also add to the list of books that you want to strengthen your Arabic language for للناطقين لغير ناطقين بها, for those who don't speak the Arabic language. طيب, with this muqaddimah, we're going to dive in to the book inshallah. دروس اللغة العربية لغير الناطقين بها. So these are a number of lessons, and the lessons found in this book surpasses the lessons found in book 2 and then also book 1, and some of them said even can probably add them together, or it would be equivalent to this. These books, Medina book 1, 2 and 3, they have side books with it. I encourage that you add some of those works as tasheel to make it more easier for you. Some of them are for parts for the teachers, some of them are for the students. In all cases, be acquainted. And as we go, we're going to study this book. And just a reminder, the Kutub of Medina, the way they've been written to study it with a teacher. So you should not study this book, whether it be book 1 or 2 or 3, without a teacher. You should always study it with someone to explain it, as it's meant for you to go over it with someone. So in itself, you wouldn't attain so much. So it requires for us to go over it, the benefits. But we are going to read in a fast pace, because there's a lot to read, oh fellow brothers. And if something's not understood, at the moment of pause or suitability, you may raise your hand and we will answer inshallah. So we encourage with the etiquettes, the mannerism of halaqah, of waiting for the ideal time to ask a question. Because at a time when a person is sharing his thoughts about a particular topic, if he's interrupted with a question, he may forget. As most of the times we are relaying from our memory and we're not reading from something, so if we're interrupted, we may forget. So we're going to start with ad-dars al-awwal. At times we may resort to using the board, but most of the times we're going to suffice with reading. Ad-dars al-awwal. Everybody on that page, inshallah? Ad-dars al-awwal, the first lesson. And this author of the Kutub Medina, وفق توفيقا عجيبا, he was been granted success in how he lays out one topic to the next. No matter how many critics are there about the books of Medina, it still stands as a book that holds its value. There's some that try to critique the author and say that he was inclining to a group, Nasr of Jama'atul Jihad, which have not been established as yet as proof. And some have said other things that they found in the book, certain things that weren't correct statements. We say كُلٌّ يُؤْخَذْ مِنْ قَوْلِهِ وَيُرَدْ أَبَى اللَّهُ الْإِسْمَ إِلَّا بِكِتَابِ. Allah has refused for a book to be perfect except His book. But the author is generally, we just know him for his fear of Arabic language, and generally this book has become somewhat of a standard that people have commented upon and explained. So as for this reason, we want to comment upon it, disregarding the author, the details regarding him. طيب, al-i'rab wal-bina. So the first lesson is in al-i'rab wal-bina. Pay attention to these two words. You're going to hear them a lot. Al-i'rab wal-bina. Familiarize yourselves with technical wordings that are going to come up in nahu a lot. Al-i'rab In the English, I think they refer to them as declinable and undeclinable. The bina is the undeclinable. So one that it is open to change on the function of the sentence by whatever occurs of the function of the sentence of words. It has an impact on the ending of the words of vowels, of its endings, how the case of the word is going to end. And there's words, no matter how the function of the sentence is, the awamil al-dakhil alayha, they call it the function, it doesn't have an impact. It is talzam halatan wahida, it stays the same, undeclinable. And this topic, al-i'rab, they said, min aham mabahith al-nahwiyya, one of the most important topics in nahu, al-i'rab. If you fail to understand this chapter, which he has started with, you basically fail to have understood most of the book. So go over it, repeat it. Al-i'rab wal-bina, what's the difference between them? Al-aslu, the origin regarding nouns, he says fil asma, it is al-i'rab. What's the origin? The origin regarding nouns is that they are declinable. They are prone to change, or they're open for various functions of the endings of vowels. Wal-bina, it is far, it's not the asl, it's not the origin. It's the opposite. It only occurs for a specific cause, and the causes for it are limited, and we can mention some of them inshallah. So al-aslu fil asma al-i'rab, ya akha. The origin regarding nouns is i'rab, not the bina, not that they remain in a state where it doesn't change. So the meaning of i'rab, ya akhwa, is التغيير, تغيير أواخر الكلم لفظا أو تقديرا. So basically the تغير, how the ending of the word changes, how it changes, either in its literal sense of the word at the ending of it, or it's given an estimated ruling of change. Taqdeeran, there's an estimated ruling. We'll explain that inshallah. So general meaning of change, at the ending of the word it's open for change, that is called the i'rab. An i'rab, there's a linguistic meaning and there's a technical meaning. There's a linguistic meaning and there's a technical meaning. I'rab generally means, of some of them I've said, I believe it has 4 or 5 meanings, but the main meanings is al-ifsah, to clarify, to speak clear, eloquence. Al-i'rab, al-ifsah. Al-Arab, why were the Arabs called Arab? Summu Araban li fasahati. They were called Arabs because of how they could articulate themselves. And nahu is, when we speak about i'rab, we're mainly speaking about the ending of the words, awakhir al-kalim. There's no mabhath in nahu about the beginning of the word or the middle part of the word. We're not discussing that. The beginning of the word and the ending of the word, the structure of it, and how it changes, that is about sarf. They said the sarf متعلق بأول الكلمة ووسط الكلمة. النحو متعلق بماذا؟ بآخر الكلمة. So we're not discussing. So if you ask any questions about the beginning of the kalima or the middle of the word, I'm just going to say to you, that is irrelevant to our topic. That's kharij anil mawdu'. It doesn't relate to what we're talking about. So try to stick to the questions of every chapter that we're in, inshallah. So here you can see a Hamza. The Hamza is equivalent to like A, and then he'll give the Ba, and it's equivalent to B. So it's like a column where he's listing things in order. So he has husn al-tartib. He has a good way of ordering things. Al-i'rab wal-bina fil asma. So we're going to speak about the i'rab and asma, the nouns. Al-ism imma mu'rabun wa imma mabniyun. The noun is either declinable or undeclinable. There's no scenario of a third. لا ثالثهما. There's no third to it. A noun is either mu'rab or mabni. So he says, فالمعرب ما تغير آخره بسبب العامل. The mu'rab, how do you define it? Now he's giving the definition. So he's giving us a definition that is accepted generally as an overall meaning, and he didn't go into length in explaining it. He gave us a basic definition. If you go into the books of nahu, there's a little bit longer definition, right? But they just give us a general definition, which is sufficient. تعريف كافي. This is a sufficient definition. ما تغير آخره بسبب العامل. That which the end of its word changes because of a factor, meaning that there is an outsiding factor, whether it be in meaning or whether it be in wording. And this factor could be something that we can see in an actual sentence that had an impact. He said the amil could be lafziya, and it could be ma'nawiyya. It could be something that has an impact on the function of the sentence, either by it being in its meaning or either by the wording. So someone asks you, what is this meaning of amil? Amil is something that plays a role in why this word changes. Why this word changes. At times it has a dhamma, at times it has a fatha, at times it has a kasra. This is called the amil. It plays a role. It does amal, right? Nahu. What does nahu mean? Nahu means misl. For example, nahu. The word nahu has a lot of meanings, ya akhwa. Nahu can mean direction. Sallaytu nahu al-mudarris. I prayed to the direction of the mudarris. Nahu, it could mean misl, the example, or like. Some have listed and wrote even poetry on the meanings of nahu. Nahu in itself, it's a discussion. Let alone the whole science of it. Just sometimes when you're studying a book on nahu with a teacher, the whole first class he's speaking to you about the meaning of nahu linguistically. Some of them say 7 meanings. It has 7 meanings. Nahu. طيب جاء المدرس. Bear with us, brothers. At the beginning we're going to read very slow and then we're going to pick up the pace. جاء المدرس. And something that you miss out, if what we mentioned in the class, you're going to have to ask your fellow peers regarding the zumala. That's what we used to do in Yemen. If we miss something, we will later on catch up. But if you have a particular question, that's something you misunderstood, then you could ask. So جاء المدرس. جاء, it's a verb, past tense verb. He came. Al-mudarris, the teacher. And we're going to explain that at the very beginning he's going to probably give examples of verb sentences. What's the meaning of a verb sentence? Jumla fi'liya. Huh? نعم, it starts with a verb, mashallah. It تبتدئ بفعله. It starts with a verb, mashallah. And جاء here, it's a verb. So we know that this is a جملة فعلية, it's a verb sentence. جاء المدرس. So this is فعل وفاعل. A فعل and also a fa'il. What does it mean, a fa'il? The actor of the verb. So this is a verb sentence that consists of an act and the actor. An act and an actor. And here he's given us an example of something that is marfu'. Marfu', right? Marfu', in this case, the primary ending for it, the sign of it, it is a dhamma. And then there's a secondary ending sign for it, but the primary ending sign for marfu', for this word marfu', it is to have a dhamma. So the origin regarding the actor of a verb is that he is marfu'. The fa'il, he is marfu'. I'm going to ask some questions, inshallah. Ja'a. What is that? فعل ماضي, mashallah. المدرس. فاعل. So our main concern is about the noun. You know we're not speaking about ja'a, right? Ja'a is a verb. فعل. He's talking about mudarris. Why does mudarris have a dhamma? Firstly, this word is mu'arab. And why it changes at time? In this scenario, we say al-mudarrisu, because it's a fa'il, it's the act of the verb, and at other times it's going to change for another reason, which we'll see. Sa'altu al-mudarrisa. Sa'altu. This is also a verb sentence. It starts the sentence, jumla fi'liya, is a verb. And it consists of something extra now, from the first one sentence. The first verb sentence consists of a verb and an actor of the verb. Fi'l wa fa'il. The second sentence consists of three components. Fi'l wa fa'il and also maf'ul. So we have something additional now. The first one is a verb, which is also a past tense verb. But this past tense verb is connected to a pronoun. A pronoun, which is the to here, meaning I, right, in this kind of scenario. Sa'altu. So it's a verb and the actor of the verb. I asked. Al-mudarrisa. It is a maf'ul. Maf'ulun bihi. What does it mean, maf'ul bihi? That the fi'l waqa alayh. The effect of the verb acted upon it, it stretches impact to something else, that's called maf'ulun bihi. So when it stretches out to a third party, the verb, or something else, and outside, then that's called maf'ulun bihi, and its ruling is that it's mansoob. Maf'ulun bihi is mansoob, ya akhwa. So let's ask now, Sa'altu al-mudarrisa Aba Layth. What is this? A'rib. When we say a'rib, means tell us what are these components of this. Jumla fi'liya, mashallah. So you're giving us a breakdown. Okay, tfadal. Okay. Fi'l madi. Okay. ضمير متصل, the two, okay. And in everybody's prints, no one has vowels, right? Except a little bit, right? If you notice, he doesn't introduce, and this is a lot, even in the books of like Muhammad Saud, they will purposely erase the vowels at times, sometimes introduce it at different times for a particular reason. Like in the books of Muhammad Saud, the Ta'bir, they'll mention it maybe a couple of times and then they'll erase it. They want you to purposely get acquainted with how this word is pronounced. So they're not they want you to get used to reading without vowels. Same thing here he deliberately is putting a vowel in the places that requires the most attention. Putting the vowel, tashkil, in the areas that require the most attention. Where's the most attention need? Al-mudarrisu, al-mudarrisa, and the next part, al-mudarrisi. So don't say, oh, subhanAllah, my print is lacking tashkil, or this, that. This is done deliberately. It's done in certain areas intentionally. So he's not really concerned if you read it, for example, as-sa'alta al-mudarrisa. Another brother reads it as sa'altu al-mudarrisa. That's not what we're really concerned about right now. We're just concerned about how are you going to read the word al-mudarris. How are you going to read the word al-mudarris here? If you can read it correctly, you pass. بغض النظر how you read ja'a or the next word that's going to come, inshallah. Al-mudarris, what's his positioning? What's his i'rab? Mansub, maf'ulun bihi, mansub. It is basically, some of them define it as an object or something that the verb has stretched its effect towards, which is the word mudarris here. And the maf'ul bihi, it is something mansub. So mansub here means the primary ending case is having a fatha. Alamatul asliya, it is a fatha, nasb. The next one, sallamtu ala al-mudarrisin. Soon we're going to give you brothers time to read each part, inshallah. So get ready, practice before you come. And certain errors will correct you. Sallamtu ala al-mudarrisi. Sallamtu. Sallamtu. Fadl Abdurrahman. What type of sentence is this? Is this a verb sentence? Is this a noun sentence? Jumla fi'liya? Jumla ismiya? Jumla fi'liya. Why is it a jumla fi'liya? Because it begins with a verb. MashaAllah. The hukm starts for what it goes for what it starts with, right? Hold on. Keep doing the i'rab, brother. That's just the beginning. Okay, so sallamtu is fi'l madi, and also fi'l madi wa fa'il. And then this ala is, it's how they say, particle or harf jar. Al-mudarris, it's a noun that it is majroor here. Why is it majroor? The primary case for a sign of majroor is having a kasra. Alamatul asliya is having a kasra because of the amil, the entry point of ala. That was the amil. Remember the part, the beginning part, it says al-mu'rab ma taghayyar akhiru bisabab al-amil. Something that changes because of an amil, something that is playing a role in the sentence, or how it functions. How it functions. So what is the amil here? It's harfu jar. Ala. Ala. It made mudarris majroor. It made it majroor. I take a kasra. Sallamtu ala al-mudarrisi. And this book, the author, he wants you to pronounce the vowels of the ending of the words even at waqf. What's the meaning of waqf? Even at a time where you're supposed to pause, like at the end of the word, we usually don't pronounce the letter ending of the word, the haraka. But in this book, you have to. Because what is the goal is to you to learn how to pronounce the ending of it. So generally, we would just say, جاء المدرس or جاء المدرس. But in this book, we'll say, جاء المدرس. سألت المدرس. That's the origin. But when we're doing this book, we say, سألت المدرس. So what happens to some brothers that miss out the point of us reading the vowels, they end up speaking like this even in real life. They go up to the mashayikh and they ask them a question and they pronounce the vowels at the time of waqf. You're not supposed to do that. And some of them, they do so to show that they know how to pronounce the word. But mainly it is done without pronouncing the last letter, right? طيب والمبني ما لا يتغير آخره بسبب العامل. The mabni, the undeclinable, it is what doesn't change, the ending of it. ما لا, what does not, يتغير آخره, change, it's the ending of it. Because we're always speaking about nahu, the ending of the word, right? بسبب, because al-amil, because of al-amil, another amil. And this amil, we said, it could be in wording and also can be in meaning. Something that plays a role in having a function to the sentence changing, this is called amil. Okay, let's identify the amil in the first examples. جاء المدرس. What's the factor that's making mudarris have a dhamma? It is because it's a fa'il. Fa'il is marfu'. Fa'il, it is marfu'. Mudarrisa, why is it, what's the amil there? The amil, it is that al-fi'l waqa alayh, that it became maf'ulan bihi. That's the amil. Al-mudarris, al-mudarrisi, what's the amil there? We mentioned al-fajar. So we're somewhat understanding what's the topic of amil. A lot of times brothers, they dive into books of nahu and they don't know these terminologies, and it becomes difficult for them. So for this reason, we chose to go over these as a review, to make sure we're acquainted with these terminologies. Nahu, what does nahu mean? Like, right? You're going to notice I'm going to repeat a lot. And nahu, when you're teaching nahu, or when you're going over nahu with your fellow brothers, you have to repeat a lot. I remember some of the teachers that were going over some of the books of nahu with us, they would just always repeat. You would think that was a broken record. Just takrar. And we found out that takrar, that repetition really helped us. Nahu, it requires kasrat al-takrar, a lot of repetition. كلما تكرر تقرر. That which is constantly repeated becomes firm in the mind. And the Prophet ﷺ كان إذا تكلم ثلاثة. When the Prophet ﷺ would speak, he would speak 3 times. He said it's an art, teaching. Even the Arabs, they say التكرار يعلم الحمار. يعني repetition even could even teach a donkey, meaning that they could teach, and even scenarios where people find it difficult. جاء, so والمبني ما لا يتغير آخره بسبب العامل. So it's the opposite, total opposite of mu'arab. Undeclinable, that which doesn't change, it's ending of it because of any factor of causing a function in the sentence. نحو جاء هؤلاء في محل رفع, سألت هؤلاء في محل نصب, سلمت على هؤلاء في محل جر. ليس بالمثال يتضح المقال. With the example, the speech becomes clear. That's why this book stands out for its example. This book in Nahu Wadih, they're known for having a number of examples and exercises that help. So we've seen in all 3 scenarios of being marfu' and being mansub and being majroor, it didn't change. It wasn't exposed to change. It's always ha'ulai, because this word is mabni. It doesn't change its ending. And so where's this i'rab? The i'rab of it, we say it is in the positioning. The person asks you what's the i'rab of it, say it's mabni fi mahal. This word, it's not mu'rab, but it's in the positioning of being something marfu'a. That's the meaning of mahal. You see this word? جاء هؤلاء. هؤلاء is in the positioning of what, brothers? في محل ماذا? رفع. Because it's fa'il, the act of the verb. سألت هؤلاء. هؤلاء here, it's in the في في what positioning في محل ماذا نصب مفعول به, because the act of the verb has had impact on it. سلمت على هؤلاء, هؤلاء here in the positioning of whether في محل ماذا جر, because this مجرور is the positioning where a حرف jar entered upon it, but because it's مبني it wasn't exposed to change. لم يتغير آخر, the ending of it did not change. Any questions so far? Anything you took? تفضل. So the amil, a good question. What is the amil, the factor that played a role in the function of the sentence? سألت المدرسة. The amil that had an impact in changing this word mudarris, it is being maf'ulan bihi, meaning that the act of the verb stretches effect to it, so it becoming an object of the verb, basically. It's called maf'ulan bihi. So we say here the amil is al-fi'l waqa alayh, the act of the verb landed upon it, meaning it's a fact. Because the words, some verbs, they stretch its effect to other words, and some verbs do not. Let's give an example of some verbs stretching its effect to other verbs or other words, and some verbs not stretching their effect. In other words, they say in Arabic فعل لازم وفعل متعدي. So a verb that is lazim, it doesn't stretch the effect. لا يتعدى أثره إلى غيره. It doesn't stretch the impact to anything else. مات رجل. مات رجل. A man died. There's no third to it. There's just فعل وفاعل. That's called lazim. يلزم فاعلا. This doesn't go beyond it. It doesn't stretch its effect beyond the act of the verb. هذا معنى فعل لازم. يلزم فاعلا. It doesn't go beyond. المتعدي يتعدى فاعلا. It stretches the effect to other than the act of the verb, and it goes even to someone else or something else, like an object. So here سألت المدرسة. The fi'l سأل, it went beyond the actor of the verb, which is the pronoun here too, to even reaching the mudarris. So this is called muta'addi, that it stretches. Right? And the word muta'addi means something that's contagious. It goes out to another. So when it stretches the impact beyond the actor of the verb, whatever it impacts is called maf'ulan bihi. Called maf'ulan bihi. What the effect of the verb landed upon. That's what it literally means, maf'ulan bihi. So everybody knows the meaning في محل رفع, في محل نصب. What does that mean? في محل, meaning it's in the positioning of being marfu'. It's in the positioning of being mansub. It's in the positioning of being this, even though it's mabni, it doesn't change. But he's just telling you what's the positioning. It's still good for us to identify his positioning. Some people come and say it's mabni, we don't need to know what mahal it is. No, you still need to know. So you say it's mabni fi mahal kada, mabni fi mahal this, because we need to know what positioning it lies in or stands in the sentence. Any other questions before what we took so far? Hold on. So sa'ala, the actual amil is the fi'l here. Basically the act of the verb stretching its impact to the word mudarris. So this is called amilun lafzi, and basically a structural factor that had an impact and why mudarris has a fatha. So it's in a wording, not in meaning. Yeah, this is the word actual sa'ala, the fi'l. It is basically the factor that played a role and why mudarris takes a fatha. When a person asks you بسبب العامل, what's the عامل? Say الفعل. الفعل وقع عليه. The effect of the verb impacted it. Hold on. Good question. Is it called a عامل because it preceded it? No, that's not the real reason. Because there are certain scenarios where even يجوز تقدم المعمول على العامل. In Arabic nahu, the permissible for the thing that has been impacted upon to precede what's the main factor. Even though the origin is that it be a verb, then after the verb, then the maf'ul be. But that's not the reason. That's not the reason. طيب, any other questions? So we took Surat. Hold on. Oh, good question. Yani, mashallah. The amil for al-mudarris, what's the cause for mudarris having a dhamma here? What played a role? Some have said is the positioning it stands in a sentence. The word mudarris. It basically holding positioning as being the actor for this verb, it is the amil. So when we say it is marfu', we say fa'il marfu'. It is marfu' because it's fa'il. So they say the amil here is ma'nawi. Some say it's ma'nawi, and there is a discussion between the grammarians, but the strongest opinion is that the cause of why this is marfu' is because it's an act of the verb. So because it's an act of a verb, because it's fa'il, it's marfu'. Any other questions to what we've taken so far? It's good that before we move on, everything's understood. Nahu, the qawaid of it, the principles, if you misunderstand something, it comes back to haunt you. That's how nahu is. It's not like sarf or ta'bir. You miss out one class, two class, mashallah, you can always catch up. But nahu, you miss qaida wahida, it affects iddat qawaid. So it's very important, fellow brothers. There's Arabs that find nahu hard. Imagine us as غير ناطقين بها. Even though the most who excelled in nahu are ajams, and mashallah, foreigners. Though they said the most of the grammarians, the greatest of scholars of nahu, were non-Arabs. Sibawayh, we find the great scholars of nahu, they weren't Arabs. So it is hard, ya akhwa. It is hard, brothers, for both. طيب, المعرب والمبني من الأسماء, because we're speaking about the nouns. What are from the nouns that are mu'rab, that are declinable, and what are not undeclinable? So he's going to list them now, inshallah. الأسماء كلها معربة ما عدا الفئات الآتية. So he's clarifying now the principle. الأصل في الأسماء الإعراب. The origin regarding nouns is that they're mu'rab. So if someone tells you this is mabni, we tell him هات الدليل. The origin is that نحن على الأصل, we're taking the original principle that these nouns are mu'rab. If someone says no, it's mabni, he has to prove it. He has to show that it falls on one of these categories. So all of the nouns are mu'rab except the following fi'ats, the categories that are going to be listed, or groups. Al-fi'at is like the plural of fi'a. Al-fi'at, jam'u, fi'a. Who can give us an ayah? Surah Ali Imran. Or in Surah Baqarah, fi'a. Huh? So my brothers, just my leg is hurting, sorry. Fi'a. Huh? The word fi'a, Surah Al-Baqarah, brothers. وَكَمْ مِنْ فِئَةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ غَلَبَتْ فِئَةً كَثِيرًا. So fi'a is the singular of fi'at. And in group, and so we're saying groups, right? So something assembled together, it's a fi'a. It's a fi'a, right? Al-Dhama'ir. So you're going to pay attention. At times, and he's going to say al-Atiya, and sometimes he's going to say at-Taliya. What does al-Atiya mean? the following. What does التالية mean? Also the following. So the art of this book is that he deliberately changes his vocabulary at times with synonymous words, mutaradifat, so you could learn new words at the same time. And this is one of the things. Some books of nahu, the book just wants to teach you the principle. But this book says, no, I'm going to teach you the principle, and I want to increase your vocab because I already know that you're known to the Arabic language. So this is the beauty of this book. So that's why it's ideal for لغير الناطقين بها. So it اسم على مسمى. This book it deserves its title. الضمائر, the first group that is mabni, because we know if we were to try to list all the mu'rab, we would go on and on and on. We will be endless, like so many words. But let us just take that which is opposing the original principle, which are limited in a few categories. So dhama'ir, the pronouns, all of them are mabniya. الضمائر كلها مبنية. Take that as a قاعدة. ما شاء الله. خذ هذه قاعدة وتستريح. Take this principle and you relax. ضمائر كلها مبنية. مثل. What does مثل mean يا أخوان? نحو. مثل means نحو. Like similarly, هو, he, whom, they as masculine, as plural masculine, in third person. We're not going to go into all of them inshallah, but أنت, أنتم, أنا, ذهبت, قالوا. هذه ضمائر الرفع. So these pronouns, whether they're ضمائر متصلة or ضمائر منفصلة. Pronouns are of two categories. Pronouns that are separate on their own. They don't connect to any word. Such as huwa. You won't find huwa connect to any word by itself. It means singular masculine in third person. Same thing with whom, masculine third person plural. Anta, these are called ضمائر منفصلة, separate pronouns that stand on their own. They don't connect to words. لا تتصل بكلمة. أنتم, أنا. But what about ذهبت and قالوا? ذهبت, this is called ضمائر متصلة, because it's connected to a word. That two there, it is a dhamir. It's a dhamir muttasil, a pronoun that's connected to a word. It doesn't stand on its own. قالوا, that wow at the end of it, wow al-jama'a, the wow of pluralism, it's also a pronoun. هذه ضمائر الرفع. These four pronouns, they are called pronouns for raf. What does raf mean? Meaning that they stand in the position of being marfu'a, even though they're mabni. Even though they're mabni. They're mabni, but we still need to know their positioning. Very important. We still need to know the positioning of these words, right? طيب رأيته, I seen him. So this is also dhamir muttasil, pronoun connected to a word. أسألك, I ask you, it's connected to a pronoun. dhamir muttasil. ضربني, he striking me. Where's the dhamir here in ضربني? تفضل. A lot of people are mistaking it with the noon. The noon is not a dhamir, ikhwa. It is called noon al-wiqaya. The noon that protects the verb from having a kasra. نون الوقاية تقي الفعل عن الكسرة أو من الكسرة. It protects the verb from having a kasra at the end of it. هذه ضمائر النصب. These are pronouns that stand in the position of being mansub, because they're in the position of mansub. رأيته, it's in the position of مفعول به, something that the effect of the verb stretched to. كتابه, his book. دفترها, his notebook. اسمك, your name, right? عليها, upon it. لنا, for us. هذه ضمائر الجر. These are pronouns for that stand in the position of being majrur. Are these all of it? No, we're just giving examples. Just giving examples. Don't try to confine them to all this, but these are just examples. He just wants to show you that these are mabni. At the same time, they're in the positioning of something, either being marfu or mansub or majrur, but they don't change. You always say ra'aytuhu. You always say as'aluka. If you're speaking to a person that is male, singular, and addressing him first person, it doesn't change. Next category, and we'll take this the last one, inshallah. Pause just because today's more as an introduction, inshallah. Asma'ul ishara. Asma'ul ishara. How do they translate Asma'ul ishara in English grammatically? Good to know these terminologies so we can say it exactly. Huh? Asma'ul ishara. Asma'ul ishara, and basically we would say in Yemen. Sorry? Identifying nouns, mashallah, beautiful. So this could be it. Yani for gesture or indication, something that you use as a noun, to indicate with. So that's called Asma'ul Ishara. Right? Directing names, mashallah, because you're actually pointing towards things. So مثل هذا, هذه, ذلك, أولئك, هذان, وهاتان. And then it says هذان وهاتان معربان. So basically all of Asma' al-Ishara are mabniya except what he said. He said the dual part of it. The dual of it. هذان وهاتان. It is both marab. The rest of all of Asma' al-Ishara كلها مبنية إلا the muthanna of it, the dual. So هذا and هذه, whether it be the masculine version singular or feminine version singular, you point to something masculine or feminine by saying this, in reference to something feminine or masculine, they're all mabni. ذلك. Some say the actual ism ishara is ذاك. You see the lam there, ذلك is lam al-bu'd. That lam, when we say ذلك, it is a lam, a letter we bring to show that something is far. So they say ذاك, you use it for something in reference to something closer. But if it's really further away, you say ذلك. ذلك. That's lam al-bu'd. And some have said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions his book, ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه. ذلك الكتاب. Allah used something ألبسه يعني في surah, something that is far. Some of the scholars have commented. They said that was in ishara that it is mu'azzam. And balagha, when you use wordings, you address something as it's far, even though it's near. It's a form of eloquence, the art of conveyance, balagha. Giving like words that are such an impact. They said even like, for example, if you were to take something that is ma'nawi and clothe it with something that is mahsus, that is tangible, you even have an impact with balagha as well, have an impact with your words. So you speak about something that is untangible, but you make it as if it's tangible. That's something you can smell or hear or see. He said هذا البس شيء المعنوي بصورة الملبوس المحسوس. This is balagha. So if someone does this, whenever he's speaking, he speaks about something that as if it's far away, but to emphasize how great it is, even though it's near. In some scholars of tafsir, they mention other wordings, why Allah mentions dhalika, but this is not our discussion there. Ulaika. So it's the plural. It's the plural. And hadani wa hatan is the dual, and they are exceptional to the ruling. And they say the reason why these two are not, even though there's a big difference of opinion, if they are mabni or mu'rab, but the strong opinion is that hadani wa hatani, they're mu'rab. So meaning at times you may hear someone say hadani, and you may hear someone say hadaini, you may hear someone say hatani, and you may hear someone say hataini. It's mu'rab, it changes by the function of the sentence. So we're going to stop with this, inshallah, if there's any questions, and we'll move forward. Inshallah, we're going to pick up the pace. So do a lot of reading prior to the book, so you do not fall behind. When we're reading faster, you're with us, inshallah. That's the goal. There's a lot to take for this. We're going to increase of reading. Iqra wa rabbuka al-akram. Read, and your Lord is the most generous. Us reading more will bring us khair. If you don't understand something, you shall understand surah. And so it's going to come. Don't expect to understand everything so perfect at first class. If there's any questions, we'll take a shower. Anything? Hold on. No. Sorry? So the damair al-raf, or damair al-nasb, and damair al-jar, but also we categorize it as damair muttasila and damair munfasila. So there's damair that are connected to words and they don't stand on their own, and there's damair that are munfasila, that they stand on their own and they don't connect to words. So there are pronouns, inshallah. Any other question? Hold on. Now, the rules for it is where it stands in the positioning of the sentence. So the same way how we said the amil for جاء المدرس, made مدرس مرفوع فاعل, the act of the verb having the sign of being marfu', because it's the positioning of coming after a verb being the actor of the verb. These also might have awamil. They have factors that play a role for making them damair raf, jar, nasb and jar. So the factor of it plays a role. Like for example, ra'aytuhu. Why is who in the positioning of being damair al-nasb? Because it has been impacted by a verb. The effect of the verb of ra'a, ra'aytuhu, it stretches an impact beyond this actor to something else, which is the pronoun here, who. So that's why it's in the position of being maf'ul, maf'ulan bihi. Right? So fi mahal nasbin maf'ulan bihi. Any other questions? I hope it's understood. Oh, mashallah. Kitabuhu. Good question. So why is kitabuhu, the who, min damair al-jar here? Why are they being positioning? تفضل. مضاف مضاف إليه. That when a word is attached to another word to make one word, the second word is always going to be in the position of being majroor. It stands the position of majroor. So mudaf and mudaf ilayh are two words to make one. Miftahul bayti, the key of the house. Kitabuhu, his book. So these two words are connected. So you can't separate between them. So whenever two words make one word, the second word always is going to be majroor. The detailed reason of why is majroor, we don't want to go into that, inshallah. We'll leave that to upcoming sessions. So that's why he's in the position of being dhamar al-jar. Any other questions, inshallah? We hope it's understood. This is the time to ask. Do not be shy away, because this is important that we all understand everything. I remember after the classes in nahu, there'll be a lineup and the manager to ask the teacher questions. And just a lineup of students. I think by the time he got finished with the students asking questions, it was almost adhan time, mashallah. People asking him questions. You mentioned in the class this, where's this, where's that, as a way to make sure you understand the class thoroughly, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum. With this we stop. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika.